So now you can share the screen.
All right, I'll do that. I hope my screen is visible. It's coming, yeah.
Yes, the screen is visible.
Yep. So the theme which was given to me is something which is very close to my heart, and I take a lot of interest researching about the Mughals and especially the medieval Indian history. And I was told to speak with the subtitle, which is the problem with the Marxist propaganda in Indian history. So, if I clearly look at it a bit objectively, then what has happened right now is that we have decided that to ask people that which side do you stand, whether you are the right side of the narrative or whether you are the left side of the narrative. And while we are doing so, somehow the history is losing its objectivity. And as the great one always say that history always owes to the truth and to the people of the particular time, and it shall not be twisted as per the narrative. You can have an opinion, but you largely cannot change the narrative or or rather the fact. You can have a narrative, different kind of narratives woven, different kind of opinions. But when we start altering the facts, then somehow the things becomes very disheartening, and we are at risk of really bringing out a lot of unaware citizens for the future to come by. And while we hover around this, the one very strongest corollary which really comes to my mind, that whether when it's supposed to be asked that who is whether Winston Churchill was really a great guy, whether he was a hero or a villain, then of course for the Indians he will be a villain. But when we go and to talk about this with the Britishers, for the Britishers, Winston Churchill will always be a great guy because he saved them from the Nazi invasion and whatnot. There were not many great things which was done for the Britishers by the Winston Churchill. So, of course, these two things are the fact that he saved the British from the Nazi invasion, but this also is the fact that he caused the Great Bengal famine, which led to killing of around 4 million people, the disaster which was upon us. So again, whether someone is a hero or villain, it again is a matter of perspective from the people who are trying to tell the story. But at the same time, he saving Britain from the Nazi invasion and he doing the Great Bengal famine, both are the facts. Now it's up to us that which side, or rather which one, which end we pick and build the narrative. Same goes with the Mughals too. Unfortunately, we don't have, Mughals were living in India, so everything had to do with the Indian perspective, and it didn't had any foreign perspective per se when it comes to the Mughals. The Mughal story always needs to be seen from the Indian perspective because they were ruling here, they were doing everything here. Whatever wealth they were earning or rather creating, it was being used over here in India itself, whatever way it would be. So we need to weave our own narrative. And what is very interesting is that when we talk about the Marxist historians, so there are a lot of them, but very prominent one, you might be able to see the images over there. Like one of them is Irfan Habib, then we have Romila Thapar, then we have Shireen, then we have Arya Sharma, then we have been there have been a lot of Marxist historians which have really written our history. But what is very interesting to note is that Marxist historians have not done much of a disaster, if you ask me. Like when I talk about the Mughal history, I do keep on quoting people like Satish Chandra, and I also keep on quoting Irfan Habib. I keep on quoting Shireen because their analysis work of how exactly the economy was working under the Mughals is fabulous. They have done a fabulous job. So now what we have to take out from their work is the analysis, the data, what they have put across, the kind of hard work which they have done, like Irfan Habib, the way he has taken the works of Abul Fazl to translate that how the revenue system was really working. It's very interesting, and I believe that apart from reading Akbarnama, this would be the best document to really understand that how the administration was being done. That also happens with the work of by the Shireen Musvi and her work, the economy of the Mughal Empire, is something which has given a complete statistical record of how exactly the Mughal Empire was working in terms of the administration. So the two books are completely Marxist in nature. When I say Marxist in nature, it means that written by they have the works of the Marxists in it. Like there are few of the essays in the economy of the Cambridge Economic History of India by Irfan Habib, which have been edited, and but they are very honest to its nature. But what we see right now is not the Marxist phenomenon, because Marxist phenomenon of approaching the history was somewhat sticking to the facts. Yes, we can keep their opinion different, but what has happened recently is that not only the opinions are different, but they are trying to manhandle the facts. And then we have got a postmodern approach, like the new postmodernists do not even agree to the analysis done by the Marxist historian like Irfan Habib and Shireen Musbi. Because if I pick the work of Irfan Habib, then Akbar needs to be the a person who used to do a lot of extortions. And in fact, he had quoted the maximum money and the maximum wealth. And according to Shireen Musbi, again, the Mughals used to take a revenue of around 56 to 57% from the fertile belts, like the belts of Malwa, which is Gujarat, and the belts of Uttar Pradesh. So around 57% revenue was being taken. On the contrary, later on when the Marathas came, they were taking a chauth and a 10% over it. So what we are told right now by the postmodern is that somehow the Mughals were doing too good to people. But again, this Marxist historian's work, the analysis that is by Irfan Habib and Shireen Musbi, largely disagrees with what they are trying to say. So now not only the opinions are there, but also the facts have been twisted. Now, what are the popular myths which have been propagated? Of course, by the Marxist historian as well, including Irfan Habib, though he writes something when he writes about the economy, but he has got a very different kind of opinion. And when it comes to, of course, the people like Andre Tuske, or whether it's Romila Thapar, or anyone all around currently working as a historian, or the mainstream historian, what we generally like to say. So they have propagated these myths, and which are like power came and never went back, as he had become Indian himself. He was invited by Rana Sanga. Mughals made Indians richer. Akbar was epitome of secularism. Mughals gave us science and technology, architecture, stable economy, and whatnot. And the latest edition, which comes from Andre Truske and many researchers, is that Aurangzeb built more temple than he destroyed. So this is something, this kind of statement is very disappointing, and and whole thesis her whole thesis is built on such statements. What it does is that it's giving you a situation where you are to praise a murderer or someone who has done a crime. So irrespective of how many goods a murderer does, so he will always remain a murderer, because even a murder is enough to penalize the person as per our IPC code or whatever. Wherever you go, the murderer is not someone. Even Hitler used to do some. Hitler was an artist as well, so we cannot start appreciating his art just because we want to appreciate it, or someone wants to pick a research on. But fair enough, that also can be a part. Someone can pick Hitler's idea of his flair towards art and whatever he liked to do, but that cannot take away the fact that he was not someone who would be who destroyed who killed a lot of Jews. So moving on with this, I'll now start. So this is just a brief genealogy of Mughal lineage, and I don't know how many of people know that actually Mughals were not very fond to be called Mughal. They were actually Temurian, and they recognized themselves most to be Turkic and less of a Mughals. Mughals actually come from a Mongol town, and And largely they were the people who were the nomads, who were the barbarians, who themselves had destroyed a lot of Turks. Turks were also ravished by the Mongols, but it was a midway alliance between Yunus Khan, who happens to be the grandfather of Babur from the maternal side, and Mirza, Sheikh Mirza, the father of Babur. When this alliance kind of happened, things started changing a bit. So they were more like a Turco-Mongols, and they themselves never called themselves a Mughal. So it's a very later introduction. Oh, this is a basic genealogy which we can find anywhere. There's nothing so great about it. So yeah. So that is how it goes. And I don't know how many people know that. I'm not sure that how many people are aware about this, but Babur actually did had the blood of both the Taimur and the Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was from the mother side and Taimur from the father side. And interestingly, one of the alliance in the family of his mother side also had got lineage from the Alexander the Great. So it was kind of a lot of mixed blood and a lot of things. And often people say that Mughals gave us this, Mughals gave us that, and whatnot. But what is very interesting, what I observed while I was reading all the Mongol text or the text of that period, is that they never used to have the institution of marriage. If you read Babarnama, you will never find that someone is getting married. It's always about the trait of the female, like some female is being given to someone just for good of saving a territory or something like that. They never use the word marriage anywhere. There is no concept of marriage. So, irrespective of what they give, of course, we gave them the institution of marriage. So, Mughals took us the institution of marriage from India. That is what I understand. Because marriage started being spoken in the whole Mughal history after Babur. So after before that, there is no mention of marriage anywhere. So so why Babur actually came to Bharat and never returned? This is so the common narrative which is given to us is that unlike other invaders, Babur chose to stay back in India and consider her as own motherland. He was invited by Rana Sanga on an agreement, but later, that is, Rana Sanga betrayed. This is what we are told. Babur was not a jihadi warrior, rather a secular one. Of course, I do agree with the third point also that to some extent he was not that religious zealot or something like that, but he used to evoke the religious sentiment among his army men to conquer the Kafirs, whom they used to call, or the Hindus of the land that time, Hindus in the Sikhs. And so these three were the common narrative that Babur came to stay here. He was invited by Rana Sanga and he was not jihadi. But the truth is that unlike other invaders, Babur chose to stay back in India because he had lost everything back homeland. He had actually nothing to go back. He was completely kicked off by his cousin and his own brothers. The things were not good. And in India, there was an easy revenue system, and the people were very docile. They used to listen to what the emperor is saying or what the Malik is saying that time. And there was a lot of wealth which was existing in India, and we are also told with a lot of articles that Mughals made us richer. But when Mughals came in, when Babur came in, our GDP share with the world was already 25%. It was not that horrible and horrendous as people want to implicate. And before any invasion from the Islamic forefront, our GDP share was around 32%, which is one third of whole of the world economy. These are the numbers given by Angus Madison, the great economist. And the second point that Babur had asked for the help from Rana Sanga, and we don't have any primary source whether Rana Sanga agreed to really entertain Babur or not. So we just see a single line in everywhere that yes, Rana Sanga agreed that he will help the Babur. But we don't see any record of Rana Sanga stating that what he wrote back in the letter. We don't have it in front of us. And his own records of Babarnama states that he was a very jihadi warrior whenever it required, and he became secular as per the political nature of the scenario around. So, and what you see over here is basically the how Babur used to do to and fro. So, the point number one, just So point number one is in June 1494, he became the ruler of Fargana when his father died when he was just 12-year old, right? And then point number two is where in May 1497, Babur besieged Samarkand at the age of 15. It was a great achievement for his life, as he states in his own word. He also mentions that how he had bestowed favors and ranks to the beys of that place, right? And the point number three is where in 1498 Babur lost home, which was his own home. It was lost to him as rebels favored his brother Jahangir. In the process, he had to retire from Samarkand, and that was lost as well. So now we see point number four is over here. So this is where the Babur is in June 1498. Babur recovers from home loss, but again, he's trying to recover from whatever he has lost, but it's not good enough, right? And point five, this is where Babur is in July 28, 1500. Babur again takes Samarkand. Point number six is where Babur is, and it is July 17, 1501. Babur loses Samarkand again to Muhammad Shaibani. So all these records that I have taken is from Baburnama, and what we are told that Babur had to. I have used the term marry, but it is actually in Baburnama. It's mentioned that he had to give off his sister when he lost the land to the Muhammad Shaibani. So now this is where the point numbers from 6 we reach to 7. In July 7, 1502 to June 26, 1503, this is where Babur is during this period. Babur takes refuge in Tashkent, where his maternal uncle ruled, but he found this place to be full of distress, right? Because if you see this statement, this is from Baburnama. During my stay in Tashkent, I endured much poverty and humiliation, no country or hope or one. This is what Babur writes. And this is point. So finally, in August 1504, Babur was able to cross the snowy lands of Hindu Kush mountains and capture Kabul from remaining in from the and he was forced to. But later on, he was forced to retreat from Kandahar. And what is very interesting is that Babur seems very disappointed from his own life that somehow he is not very jubilant about whatever is happening. So this is a quote taken from Baburnama itself. Is there one cruel turn of fortune's wheel unseen by me? Is there a pang, a grief my wounded heart has missed? So this is what Babur is writing. And Farishta quotes, that Babur was like a king on a chessboard, moved from place to place and buffeted about like pebbles on a seashore. So he was not a very stable guy. He was just moving from here and there. So this kind of leads you to a reason that, of course, he was not having a very stable life back then. And so by 1505, Babur mentions in 1505 that my desire for Hindustan had been constant. It was the month of Shaban, the sun being in Aquarius, that we rode out of Kabul for Hindustan. So why Babur always talks about Hindustan? It is because of the Taimur. He wanted to fulfill the dream of Taimur, and also because he considered himself to be the heir of Taimur. And that's why he always has this quest that he has to rule Hindustan. So in 1526, Babur finally got successful of conquering Hindustan in the fifth raid. It was his fifth raid. It was not so easy for him. Babur has also acknowledged in Baburnama that Kandahar and Kabul were running in extreme crisis, and it was needed for him to get the wealth of Hindustan. So basically, he wanted to come to Hindustan to take the wealth so that he can get his places of Kandahar and Kabul in the right order. So Babur also mentions himself to be the third Terramonta conqueror of Hindustan, that is the Temurian, and he called it first it was Mahmud. And in folio 291 of Baburnama, one can also observe that Babur actually hated India a lot. He hated the culture and climate of India, and he has given an elaborate explanation that why he is hating it. And Babur, but why he is hating India for its climate and culture, he clearly mentions in Baburnama that he can take advantage of India, but majorly on how easily he can draw revenues. Babur mentions of abundant gold and silver. He also talks about easily available workforce. So what best a person would need that time? He has got best of the revenue sources. There's abundant gold and silver. He has lot the places what he used to have. People in India are docile. They're easily available workforce. So of course, India was a very favorable place for him, and there was no question that why this guy should return back. Though he was not neither liking the culture nor the climate of the land. So these were the only forces which attracted to him. So it's very baseless argument that he had become a very much Hindustani and loved India the way others used to do. So, so these are the excerpts which I have taken from Babar Nama, where he talks about his whole revenue system, and where we see that around for 4,21,000, 42,12,000 florins revenue was what he was generating in 1528, and it was quite a huge one for someone who had lost all those resources back then where he belonged to. So of course he had to be there in India. So what did Babur exactly do to this huge revenues? So this is where the whole details have been given. Like he used to spend a lot on his own riches, and he used to send back a lot of money uh, to uh, to the other to his own homeland. So as a question arises, that was he really spending it on Indians and India? Had he spent his revenue on Indians and India, we would have said that this guy is doing something for Hindustan. But somehow he was not doing so. Babur writes in Babur Nama that suitable money gifts were bestowed from the treasury on the whole army to every tribe there was, Afghan, Hazara, Arab, Baloch, etc., etc., according to their position. So every trader and student, indeed, every man who had come with the army took ample portion and share of British gifts and largesse. And indeed, to the whole various train of relations and younger children went masses of red and white, of plenishing jewels and slaves. Babur also has written in Babarnama itself that valuable gifts were sent for the various relations in Samarkand, Khurasan, Kashgar, and Iraq. To holy men belonging to Samarkand and Khurasan went offerings vowed to God, so too to Makkah and Medina. He was even sending the revenues from India to Makkah and Medina. Babur also disbursed lots of money in Afghanistan. He writes that we gave one Shahrukhi for every soul in the country of Kabul and the valley side of Varsak in Afghanistan, man and woman, born and free of age and knowledge. So all the revenues were going mostly to his own home. So the image what you see here is the Baba's tomb in Kabul. So if at all he loved India, he would have liked to be buried over here, but he wanted himself to be buried in Kabul. So so this gives a clear indication that while he really criticized the climate and culture of India, he was definitely not in love with India, and at the same time he didn't have any emotion with it. And this term of him really explains it aloud. So now the next question arises: that was Babur invited by Rana Sanga, or was he not invited by Rana Sanga? My reading and my analysis confirms that perhaps he was not invited by Rana Sanga. And so if we start looking into Babarnama, the first instance of he being invited comes when Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, and the invited Babur, the ruler of Kabul, to invade India. This is available in Babarnama, and it also can be read by a book by S.M. Ikram, where he writes about the Muslim civilization. And Daulat Khan appealed Babur to come to India and defeat Ibrahim Lodi. So Babur has the translator of the Babarnama has given no primary source for Rana inviting Babur. This is just comes as a mention of a historian of that period called Ahmad Yadgar, that also in a translatory note. So how historians are really making a claim that Babur was invited by Rana Sanga and Rana Sanga ditched Babur. So they always pick the Mewar historians, who have been written a lot of history about the Mewar. And one of the prominent historian is G.N. Sharma. So when you pick the G.N. Sharma's book and you do a bit of due diligence, then you will find that this claim is again very fake. because G.N. Sharma mentions of Babur writing to Rana Sanga in his book, and he writes, and he says that he's quoting the Rajput chroniclers, but we don't know who exactly the Rajput chroniclers are. He mentions that Rana Sanga had replied with an Rana Sanga had agreed to helping Babur, but there is no mention of any letters. Had there been any Rajput chronicler, he would have been able to pull exactly those letters was, but we don't have any source of those letters. And it's just a juxtaposition. If I say that Rana Sanga offered support, there is no primary or secondary source to establish this claim. Interestingly, if you further go on to read the Sharma's book, you will find that what his own claim is a very foolish one, because he further praises that Rana Sanga was a very brave warrior. Why will he need support of Babur? So he himself is contradicting the one of the paragraph he himself has written. So hence, unlike other invaders, Babur chose to stay back in India because he had lost everything back homeland. He was getting easy revenue in India from docile people, access of abundant wealth that existed nowhere else. And Babur had asked for help from Rana Sanga. There is no primary source for the agreement from the Rana Sanga. So, yeah. So this is what Farishta also quoted. Babur left himself stripped so bare by his far-flung largesse that he was nicknamed Kalandar. Yeah, so he was completely a lost guy. This is what Farishta writes. And India happened to become a base for him to reflourish. So let's see something about Akbar. Most of the times, I see Akbar as a very complex character, and I always keep on saying that when you read history, you have to read the shades of gray. It cannot be black and white. It needs to be something where you need to see the goodness of the people and the bad as well. But for the Indian civilization, mostly we have got bad from Akbar. So largely I am focusing more on that. Of course, there had been some good from Akbar too, but somehow the badness, what he has done, supersedes all the goodness, what he had done. So here what you see is a coin of Akbar, which was issued in the initial phases, which writes where the kalma was written, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And the bottom it is written, Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar Ghazi Badishah. So he is very fond of calling himself, getting be called as Ghazi. So Ghazi is no one but a Islamic warrior, or one who really fights for the flourishment of Islam. So he was seeing himself as a warrior of Islam. And if you're a warrior of Islam, somehow the doctrines won't let you become a secular. So this coin of Akbar itself contradicts a large claim that Akbar actually was a very large-hearted guy and a very secular one. So now you see a snippet here, and this is talking about how actually Akbar got the name Akbar, or how Jalaluddin got the name Akbar. There are many claims out there which says that some Rajput king had given him this title. But if you read Akbar Nama, you will read that on the day of coronation, Akbar himself had given the name, that is Darai Akbar. So Akbar was given the name himself. So when we say Akbar the Great, it's a great oxymoron, because the great cannot happen. And somehow, there's a lot of oxymorons which make this whole Mughal history going. And we are also told by a lot of people that Akbar was a great economic reformist. But if you ask me, that he had ruined the most. And and this is what I draw again from a lot of Muslim scholars, and also writing from the Marxist historian Irfan Habib. So the Marxist historian Irfan Habib work, the stellar work of the Cambridge History of Indian Economy, really establishes that Akbar was a extortionist and he was a hoarder of money. He did nothing much great for the Indian economy. Yeah. So this is the book which I was talking about, S.M. Ikram's book, which people can read and they will get a lot of insights. Yeah. So Irfan Habib has mentioned that he used to force a lot of productions by the peasants, and Asaf Khan was the guy who was drawing up financial benefits out of it. Irfan Habib also talks about extortion, and he has given example of Saishta Khan, Prince Ajimushan, And he further gives an account of money hoarding, a large scale by Akbar, which I mentioned. He has quoted D. Light, scholar of that time, a Western scholar, who has accounted Akbar's treasure to be around 522.4 million florins, and Sarista Khan had hoarded around rupees 380 million. So hoarding of rupees 380 million in that time is somewhat it's a massive number, and they were hoarding it. And when you're hoarding, and somehow the numbers about the GDP per capita suggest that your people are becoming poorer, and at the same time, GDP of the empire is increasing a bit. It means that you are really extorting the money, you are hoarding it, you are not spending it on the people because people are not becoming richer. So this is a very substantiated fact that India's per GDP capita went negative during the reign of the Mughals, that is from 1500 to 1820 AD. I'm quoting Angus Madison for it. And so it means that the people, the Mughal Empire kept becoming richer while the Indians kept becoming poor. Because when GDP is increasing and GDP per capita is reducing, so you can understand that what exactly is happening. It's a status of hoarding of the money and GDP. And also, one thing is very interesting to note that our GDP share of the world never went below China until 1600 AD. So our GDP share of the world went below China for the first time under Akbar the Great in 1600 AD. So this is the snippet which I have pulled from the Angus Madison's book, which it will show you that if you go around 1600 AD, this is where we are, and our GDP share is 22.4, while of China has become 29. If I look at 1500, our GDP share is 24.4, and China is 24.9. If I go to 1000 AD, our GDP share to the world is 28.1, while of China is 22.1. So we see a massive drop of our GDP in the time of Akbar. Of course, it picked once when in the later period in around 1820 AD. But you need to understand that that was a period when Marathas were become powerful, and Marathas had become powerful, and also at the same time, this is a myth that we are told that British took India from the Mughals, but actually they took it from the Marathas. So yeah, so we can, that is a separate topic, so I will not dwell much upon it. So we will look a bit into Akbar's secularism, on his secularism. So Akbar had got a massive hatred for both Shias and Hindus. I have pulled a snippet from the book by Irfan Habib itself, a Marxist historian, mind you. And this book is called Akbar in his India, where he mentions that Akbar suppressed Shias and Hindus in his earlier reign. Akbar suppressed Muslim sects that were condemned by the orthodoxy as heretical, because there were a lot of school of thoughts which were emerging in Islam as well, which were considered heretical as per the Sunni ideology. So he suppressed them a lot. So one of them sect was the Madhavi sect, which was suppressed badly. And there was a very interesting incident, a sad incident rather, of 1567 AD. And on advice of Sheikh Abu Nabi, Akbar ordered the exhumation of Mir Murtaza Sharifi Siraji. He was a Shia buried in Delhi for the grave's proximity to that of Amir Khusro. Because this Shia saint's grave was besides Amir Khusro a Sunni, Akbar was not very happy, and he took out the body and he got it replaced somewhere. So that was the level of his hatred for the Shias, to start forget about the Hindus and the Sikhs and other people. So as I said, Akbar suppressed Madhavism in 1573 till 1573 AD, and during his campaign in Gujarat, Madhavi leader Bandagi Mian Sheikh Mustafa was arrested and brought to the chains to the court. And after a debate, there was a debate where he was told to prove that how Orthodox Islam is not correct. If he can prove it something, or else he will be given a prison. So he was given a rigorous prison for 18 years, and a lot of torture happened, and a lot many things. And these all data which I am pulling is from again from a Marxist historian Irfan Habib in his book Akbar and India. Right. Yeah. So Akbar suppressed Shia and Sunnis, as I already told. And in 1578 AD, the Mughal Emperor Akbar famously referred to himself as Emperor of Islam. Emir of the Faithful, Shadow of God on Earth, Abul Fath Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar Pasha Ghazi is the most just wise and the most God-fearing ruler. So he was trying to appropriate himself as the most appropriate Islamic ruler of that time. So this gives you an idea that even in 1578, and you mind you, this is exactly the period around which then uh, Prayagraj's name was changed to Allahabad, right? This is the period when. So people say that it was because of secularism that he gave this name, and perhaps it had come from the name Din Ilahi, like how Allahabad. But it happened. The name had come in 1580s, and in 1578, we see that Akbar is really suppressing uh, the Hindus, the Shias. He's also trying to be proclaimed as the emperor of whole of the Islam, the most faithful one, right? The Badshah Ghazi. So if that is the case, how he can after 2 years suddenly become so secular? And this claim of saying that this has come from Dine Ilahi is so bunkum, because Dine Ilahi was established in 1584, but on the other hand, this Prayagraj name was changed in 1580 itself, right? So this claim also doesn't work very well. Now, if we go a bit of detail about the massacres of Hindus, which Akbar did, then it's a long list. Like in Garha in 1560 AD, right? Abul Fazl states, I'm quoting Abul Fazl, states that around 48,000 Hindus were persecuted at the orders of Akbar. Now, of those 48,000 Hindus, 8,000 were the Rajput warriors and 40,000 were the peasants. So why the peasants were killed? Had Akbar didn't had anything against the Kafirs or the Hindus. And this is a snippet of the book which I have put across for the reference. Right. So again, the snippet which is supporting my claim. Akbar and in the massacre of Gondwana, which is again a big one in 1564, Akbar conquered Gondwana kingdom. The territory was ruled over by Raja Vidnarayan. He was a minor, and his mother Durgavati, a Rajput warrior, queen of the Gonds. So Durgavati had to commit suicide, because after the battle of Damu, while Raja Veer was slain at the fall of Chauragarh, the mountain fortress of the Gonds, it was very high chances that Mughals will really ravish and vest the things around. The Mughals seized the immense wealth, and around 1,000 elephants. Kamla Devi, the younger sister of Durgavati, was sent to the Mughal harem, as was not really treated well. So, this really gives you an idea about how respectful Akbar actually was towards a female of the losing party. Though we are given a different narratives from the Bollywood and the stories which are spun around somehow. And again, this is what I'm sourcing from, again, a Marxist historian, Satish Chandra. This is from the snippet of the book Medieval India from Sultanate to the Mughals, Part 2 by Satish Chandra. So Marxist historian has given the fact, but the postmodernists are framing the opinion as well as altering the facts. So, and then we come to the persecution of the Nagarkot. In Nagarkot, Nizamuddin Ahmad, one of the Islamic scholars of that time, recorded the violence during the conquest of Nagarkot, which is actually the modern Himachal Pradesh. And he states that the fortress of Voon, which is an idol temple of Mahami, was taken by Muslim assailants. A party of the Rajputs who had resolved to die fought till they were all cut down. Nearly 200 black cows belonging to the Hindus during the struggle had crowded together for the shelter in the temple, right? Though they had come in the temple to get the shelter. The troops of the Akbar slaughtered them all, and the blood of the cows were put in the boots and they were spread all across in the temple. So this is a record given by Islamic scholar. This is not by someone else, and has been documented by John Dawson and Eliot in the book The History of India as told by its own historians, where he's quoting that Muslim scholar, and this is a snippet of the book. So, but of all, one of the most deadliest seas of what is called is the siege of the Chittor. So many temples were destroyed. The shrine of Moinuddin Chishti in Ajmer were presented. So we all go to Moinuddin Chishti, Ajmer Sharif. But here is a dark fact about it. Many temples were destroyed. The shrine of Moinuddin Chishti in Ajmer was presented with the brass candlesticks by Akbar. which were taken after the destruction of the Kalika temple during the siege of the Chittor, right? So the candlestick over there is on the Kalika temple. In 1567 AD, Akbar left for Chittor and on 20 October 1567 camped in the vast plains outside the fort. In the meantime, Rana Uday Singh, on the advice of his council of advisors, decided to go away from Chittor to the hills of Gogunda with his family. Jaimal and Patta were left behind to defend the fort along the 8,000 Rajput warriors and 1,000 musketeers under their command. Akbar laid the siege onto the fortress, which lasted 4 months. So there was a struggle of around 4 months. On 22 February 1568, Jauhar was committed in the house of Patta, Aisar Das, and Sahib Khan. Next day, the gates of the fort were opened, and Rajput soldiers rushed out to fight the enemies. The ensuing battle, 8,000 Rajputs were killed alongside again 30,000 peasants. Again, 30,000 peasants were killed. So this gives you, and so this again has been sourced from the book called Emperors of the Peacock Throne, the saga of the great Mughals. So, and this one more very interesting tale has been told by James Todd. Maybe that is a bit exaggerated, but there has not been much of the counter argument to it. But James Todd writes that Akbar had the Janeu of the slain collected and weighed for the estimate of the killed, and it weighed around 200 kg. So this is a very horrific incident if it would have been true. Now, this so as per the Jesuit father Montserrat Acuvia and Enric, who was in Akbar's court in the early 1580s, and he's recorded his journey in a travelogue. This is the highlighted part, and he mentions that religious zeal of the Muslims had destroyed many Hindu temples. So it was during the Akbar that he is recording the same. So in 1580, in the year when Allahabad was named, and people claim that it was for the secularism, there he records that a lot of Hindu temples have been destroyed. In the place of temples, countless tombs and the shrines of Muslims have been erected in which these men are worshipped as if they were saints. So this is what the Father Montserrat records while his journey to the Akbar's court. So Akbar, and this is again one very interesting incident about Badani. Badani is anyways known to be a bigot guy, though he was a historian as well. So it's mentioned, I'm quoting it from the book, The Legacy of Jihad, Islamic Holy War and the Fate of Non-Muslims. It has been edited by Andrew G. Boston, wherein he has put the records of the sayings of a lot of Muslim scholars. And here he is quoting Badani himself, where Badani says that he was rewarded with gold coins, right? And he was rewarded with gold coins because he had promised to soak his Islamic beard, as in the beard itself, in the Hindu infidel blood. So the gesture of Badani had really delighted the Akbar, the great secularist. Secularist is just a thing by me, but this is what the Badani is writing about Akbar, right? So this is again happening in 1576 AD. So, if we talk about the economic devastation, so this image, these are the two tables put across on the book of Angus Medicine. So here I already spoke about the the GDP share, and we can see that when Mughals came in, our GDP share was 24.4%, and in 1680 it depleted to 22.4. In 1700 it was 24.4, and it became 16. It became 16, 1820, and it further on it started depleting, right? With the Britishers coming in, Britishers ruled whatever more was ruled. So what was the difference between the Britishers and the Mughals was that Mughals used to collect all the things looted or whatever extorted, and in the India itself. So because the empire of Mughals was not located outstation, so when we talk about here the Mughal empire wealth is equal to the Indian empire, India's wealth. In the contrast, when we talk about the wealth of the British Empire, it's the wealth which is kept in the Britain, right? Why and they are looting away the things. So this is the difference. Somehow, this GDP, the increasing GDP, even during the Mughal reign is a misnomer, because GDP per capita, as stated by me earlier, this is what you can see, that it is the growth rate is minus 0.01 between 1500 to 1820. GDP per capita is the money what you have per person. So the growth of the per person from 1500 to 1820 AD was in minus, it was depleting, while the GDP of the Mughals were actually increasing. So it gives a fair amount of idea that that actually, Mughals were ruining the local Indians. The peasants were badly devastated. So, and also we have a lot of records where the money was being sent to Makkah and Medina to please the sheriffs of Makkah and Medina, and at the same time, because the religious gelatinous of the people. So, I will not hover much here in terms of the how exactly the wealth was looted by the Mughals, because that's a very separate topic itself, and it will be elongated to a great extent. So I will skip that for right now, but I will talk a bit about the Taj Mahal. Generally, we are told by the current left-leaning historians, or whom I call the postmodernists, that Taj is a gift. But how many people really know about the reality of the Taj? So one is the contested fact that a contested issue that it was actually an existing structure which was just modified a bit by Shah Jahan, and perhaps it was a temple. I have not dwelled much into it, so I will not comment much on it. But there is one very horrifying fact related to the Taj. The Taj was built by the blood of the 7.4 million people who died in the Deccan and the Gujarat famine of 1631 to 1632. And this is very important point to note, because it is said by the records of the Islamic records that around 4.18 crore silver rupees was put to retrofit or whatever, do it to the structure to get what you have in front. And it was commissioned in 1631 to 1632, and the famine was lasting from 1631 to 1632. So the money would have been used to really, really help the poor and see that what best can be done for them, but it never happened. So I do see Taj somehow as a sinister plot which led to a lot of destruction and the great famine, right? And in fact, there are very substantial records which can show us that, in fact, famine was created by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan itself, right? And how do I tell it? Because, see, first of all, when I talk about 4.18 crore rupees in 1630 versus 180, so what exactly it would have meant in those times? So, average income of a single family of peasants was approximately equal to 1 dam per day. 1 dam was nothing but a copper coin, and 40 dams was equal to one single rupee, right? So this one single rupee would have fetched around 300 kilograms of rice in that time, one single rupee. And here we had spent 4.18 crore rupees, right? So it means massive. So how much rice would have been bought that time? And so this is the scale of the thing which I'm talking about. And many people would contest that how actually Shah Jahan created the famine, because famine has to do with the rain. Then I will like to remind them of the Great Famine of Bengal, which was actually created by Winston Churchill. So famine necessarily doesn't mean that going away of the cultivation, but it necessarily means the state of the dying of the people and the epidemic which follows. And when people, so earlier in India, people had a system of surplus. So whenever the rain never used to happen, they were able to sustain, because there were a lot of surplus grain and all. But the kind of wealth these guys used to extort from the people, or in the name of revenue, was massive, as stated by the works of Shireen, which whom I was quoting earlier. They were taking it around from the fertile belt of UP, from the fertile belt of Gujarat, where we saw around 3.4 million, 3 to 4 million people had died in this famine. They were drawing around 57 to 58% of the revenues, and and the overall revenue what they were generating from from Surat itself was around rupees 1 crore that time. So it speaks a lot that how, and in fact, in Badshah Nama, there's a whole, Badshah Nama is nothing but the story of the Shah Jahan itself, his own story. So where it really mentions that they really are very proud of having destroyed the cultivation too. So there was systematic destruction of the cultivation as well, right? And so this speaks a lot. And in fact, this itself can be explained quite separately that how Shah Jahan actually engineered the famine or the death toll of 7.4 million people that time. So moving on a bit, yeah. So again, what is a new thing on the board is Aurangzeb, right? And Aurangzeb somehow, off late, not even a Marxist historian, we are really jumping in to say that Aurangzeb was secular or something. But recently, this is a phenomenon that Aurangzeb actually built temples too and whatnot, right? Choice for Tipu, but we're not, let's not go to Tipu, but for Aurangzeb. So this is one of the Farman. This is a general order given by Aurangzeb. So if I really explain a bit about, I think I should spend a bit of 5 to 10 minutes on Aurangzeb because it's important to understand what exactly this guy was doing, right? So as per the Mughal records, Aurangzeb's policy saw the demolition of Hindu temples as the most important objective. This is really stated. And once Dara Shikoh had presented Keshav Roy temple of Mathura with carved railings, he had just presented it, which the great Sufi, Aurangzeb was Sufi by the way, ordered to be removed on October 13, 1666. He observed in his Farman that in the religion of Muslims, it is improper even to look at a temple, and that it was unbecoming of a Muslim to act like Dara Shikoh. This is I am quoting from Umurat-e-Huzur Kishwar Kashai for October 13, 1666. Following which, soon after that, Kalga temple of Delhi was destroyed by Aurangzeb. And this again I have sourced from the Mughal record itself. Mirza Raja Jai Singh of Amber passed away in 1669. On April 9, 1669, Aurangzeb ordered the demolition of temples and gurukuls throughout the empire once Raja Jai Singh was killed. One Raja Jai Singh passed away. He had also ordered for the complete banning of puja samskars. So puja was to be completely stopped. Soon after these orders, the great temple of Keshava Rai in Mathura was demolished in January 1670. So this is what I'm quoting is after this general order of 1670. So, right now we are talking about Mathura, Kashi, and everything. So Aurangzeb was behind it, and this is the image which kind of depicts that how the demolition of this very temple was done. And so soon after the orders, the great temple of Keshav Mathura was destroyed. And interestingly, Aurangzeb had changed the name of Mathura to Islamabad as well. So this is the kind of, and this is what came up. This is a painting representing. So the bigotry of Aurangzeb did not stop there, and he demolished the sacred temple of Vishwanath at Varanasi as well. This is again I have sourced from Masari Alamgiri, and he also went on to destroy Somnath. Likewise, Aurangzeb kept on demolishing Hindu temples, and the evidences flow from the Mughal writing itself, right? He destroyed the great temples of Mewar, Marwar, including the 100 other temples in the environs of Udaipur, and many more. In Chittor, he ordered demolition of more than 5 dozens of temples, which included the finest work of Kumwa's time and even earlier. Only from the Marwar, several cartloads of murtis were brought, which were cast into the courtyard under the steps of Jama Masjid. This is again a source from Masai Alamgiri, page 175. So, and now we have got a comical. So the statements what the postmodern historians are making are kind of comical in nature. Like it seems that they are hell bent to make Aurangzeb what he himself wouldn't have been very happy to be called like, right? In June 1681, Aurangzeb ordered for the demolition of highly revered Jagannath temple in Puri, right? In September 1682, the Bindu Madhav temple in Varanasi was demolished as per Aurangzeb's orders. On September 1, 1681, his rebel son Akbar joined Chhatrapati Shivaji's son Sambhaji. Right, this had not only created problems for Aurangzeb but had left him badly furious. He was traveling to Deccan then. He ordered that all the temples on the way should be destroyed. This again is sourced from the Mughal records. Aurangzeb kept ordering destruction of temples almost till the time he died. We find him ordering the destruction of Paranpur temple and sending butcher camp to slaughter the cows of Gaushala in that precinct. Right, and then following the sayings of Holy Quran, following the sayings of Holy Quran, Aurangzeb reimposed jizya on the Hindus on April 2, 1679. He quotes Quran over them. That why he is doing it, and further in the Farman, he brought few bans. So Atishbaji was restricted in Diwali, and firecrackers were first banned by Aurangzeb. Replacement of Hindu officials by Muslims to enhance the Muslim welfare and glory of Islam. Gathering of Hindus at religious shrines were stopped. Traveling of palkis on riding elephants and Arab Iraqi
Sir,
horses. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, sorry to disturb you, sir, but due to time constraint, we have to sum up with a Q&A too.
Sure. So I will just wind it up. Give me 5 minutes, 2, 3 minutes. Yeah. So I'll just move
Yeah,
on
sure, sir.
to I'll just move on to the most important thing, Fatwa Alamgiri. So recently there have been Muslim politicians who say that when asked that which Indian book do you follow then they say proudly quote Fatwa Alamgiri, that is our law book. We follow this Indian book. We are not following only the Sunnah or the Islamic theology. So when they say this, the very interesting point from Fatwa Alamgiri has been noted here. The right of Muslims to purchase and own slaves. Muslim man right to have sex with the slave girl he owns or he owned by no inheritance right for the slaves. The testimony of all slaves who are in the court of the law. Slaves require permission of the master before they can marry. An unmarried Muslim may marry a slave he owns, and so on and on. So we see that somehow the whole story of Islam, the whole story of Mughal Empire is kind of whitewashed off from what exactly how they would have liked themselves to be told. So that is where I stand right now with the proposition, and very soon my books will be coming out on it, where I'm going to talk about whole of a Mughal Empire. It's a 6-book series. Each book will talk about each of the emperor. So thanks a lot for now. So that's all from my side. You guys can put across the questions if you have any.
Yeah. So we will just be winding up with the ceremony with the Q&A sessions now.
Yeah.
So if anyone has question, they can either put it in the chat box or raise their hands.
Yes, Prashant, please go ahead with your question.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि अगर सर मतलब मंदिर अगर तोड़े गए हो या फिर सर लोगों पे इतना जुल्म हुआ तो सर मतलब लोगों ने खुलकर इसका विरोध क्यों नहीं किया, फिर बड़ा मतलब विद्रोह संगठित क्यों नहीं किया, और सर मंदिरों को तोड़ने का खास उद्देश्य क्या था सर? सर यू आर म्यूटेड.
हाँ, सो अगर मैं प्रिसाइजली इसके बारे में बताऊँ तो मुगल्स के काफ़ी कलर्स थे, एंड मुगल्स एंड somehow when this whole demolition of temples was happening, जब ये demolition चल रहा था तो लोगों का आइडिया यहाँ तक रहता था कि वो मुगल बहुत सारे हिंदू राजा भी मुगल्स के साथ मिल चुके थे उस वक्त तक, एंड इट वाज मोर अबाउट, अब जैसे मैंने राजा जयसिंह के बारे में बोला कि एक बार उनकी मौत हुई तो उसके बाद पूरे टेरिटरी को कॉन्कर करना शुरू कर दिया औरंगजेब ने, और वहां पे लगातार मंदिरों के डेमोलिशन हो रहे थे. सो मुगल आर्मी इतनी स्ट्रांग थी और उन्होंने क्या किया था कि हमारे जीडीपी पर कैपिटल स्ट्रक्चर को इतना वीक कर दिया था कि हर इंसान इतना वीक हो चुका था कि आप खाओगे या फिर मतलब रिलीजन को इतना प्रिजर्व करते रहोगे। लेकिन उसके साथ साथ बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात यह है कि डिस्पाइट पेइंग जिजिया जिजिया पे करने के बावजूद लोगों ने अपना फेथ नहीं छोड़ा। दे कंटिन्यू टू प्रैक्टिस द सेम। सो इट वाज समहाउ वेरी टावरिंग फॉर देम टू काउंटर द डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ टेम्पल्स दैट टाइम। इतना आसान नहीं था अब विद्रोह करना अगेंस्ट सच अ माइटी, एंड ऑफ कोर्स वी हैड अ लॉट ऑफ रिबेलियंस। लाइक हमको नॉर्थ ईस्ट के बारे में नॉर्थ वेस्ट के बारे में पढ़ाया था, नॉर्थ ईस्ट के बारे में नहीं। और होम को तो वो कभी कॉन्कर ही नहीं कर पाए ना। सो जिन लोगों ने फाइट दिया उनको, लाइक वाइज साउथ में भी उनका इन्फ्लुएंस उतना नहीं रहा था जितना नॉर्दर्न बेल्ट की तरफ रहा था। उसके बहुत सारे सोशियो पॉलिटिकल रीजंस थे, तो उसके बारे में कभी बाद में चर्चा कर सकते हैं। बट हाँ, विद्रोह उतना सफल नहीं हो सकता था, इट वाज नॉट पॉसिबल, क्योंकि उन्होंने कंडीशन इंडियंस की काफी खराब करके ऑलरेडी रखी थी।
सर मंदिरों को तोड़ने से तो लोगों में नफरत आएगी, वो सर इस्लाम में कैसे फिर कन्वर्ट हो जाएंगे सर? फिर वो
नहीं,
उसमें तो फिर नफरत बढ़ेगी ना सर।
नफरत एक चीज होती है, यहाँ पे दो चीज होता है आपके पास। या तो आप जिंदा रहोगे, या फिर औरंगजेब के फरमान में लिटरली लोगों को पैसे दिए जाते थे कन्वर्ट होने के लिए। तो वहां पे ऐसा सिनेरियो चल रहा था कि लोग के पास या तो आप जियोगे या फिर आप रिलीजन या फिर फेथ या धर्म को आगे लेकर के जाओगे। लेकिन जब ऐसा सिनेरियो क्रिएट होता है तो लोग कई बार, लेकिन देयर इज अ वेरी, डिस्पाइट ऑल दिस एट्रोसिटीज till independence, we had a very large Hindu population. There were not many conversions which happened, which speaks for itself कि बाकी के सारे कंट्रीज में जहां पे भी इस्लामिक रूल रहा वहां कन्वर्शन हो गए completely, but we fought it well. Our ancestors really fought it well, and they didn't let the faith go by so easily.
सर क्या कन्वर्जन में सर जाति प्रथा भी जिम्मेदार थी सर भारत में, जो हमारे हिंदुओं का कन्वर्जन हुआ?
देखिए, जाति, जिसमें दो चीज होती है, दो चीज है, जाति प्रथा और जाति प्रथा को लेकर के कुरीतियां, दोनों अलग चीज है। तो हम क्या होता है, जैसे हमको जो ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्ट्रक्ट दिया गया है, हम सीधे बोलते हैं कि जाति प्रथा ही खराब चीज है। तो इस पर थोड़ा सा मैं ड्वेल करना चाहूंगा। जाति का मतलब ये होता है, जाति इज नथिंग बट अ सब कैटेगराइजेशन। आपका कैटेगराइजेशन है, अगर मैं संस्कृत पाणिनि को कोट करूँ तो आप जैसे एक मनुष्य के लिए एक शेर एक दूसरी जाति हो सकती है, उसी तरह मनुष्य के अंदर फर्दर सब डिविजन्स होते हैं। एक मनुष्य के अंदर मेल एंड फीमेल का जाति भेद हुआ, फिर उसके बाद एक जब इंसान आता है तो उसके अंदर जाति भेद होता है वर्ण के बेसिस पे। वर्ण भी एक तरह का जाति होता है, क्लासिफिकेशन है। और फिर उसके बाद फर्दर क्लासिफिकेशन होते हैं, और जो जाति सब डिवाइड किए गए थे वो बेस्ड, जैसे मान लीजिए पहले वाटर के स्ट्रीम के पास वॉशरमैन रहते थे या धोबी रहते थे, क्योंकि वो सब एक जगह कोलैक्ट हो गए एक साथ। तो इस तरह का डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन होना शुरू हो गया था। और जनरली क्या होता है कि व्हेन यू आर बॉर्न टू अ पर्टिकुलर, आप अपने लेगेसी को आगे कैरी फॉरवर्ड करते हो। जैसे एक वॉरियर का बेटा बड़े आसानी से वॉरियर बन सकता है, बट देयर वेयर इंसिडेंसेस ऑफ वर्ण परिवर्तन, बट इट इन्वॉल्व्स अ लॉट ऑफ तपस्या। इट वाज नॉट सो इजी टू डू, बिकॉज बट एट द सेम टाइम जाति प्रथा was to some extent responsible, but not to that extent, as per we have not seen any historical record of it except for neo writings by B.R. Ambedkar or neo writings by a lot of Marxist historians as well, like including Irfan Habib, who blames Jati Pratha to be the reason for it. But we don't find it in records of any Islamic scholars or any primary sources. So it's very tough to comment whether this was actually the reason or not.
Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. The next question is by Saurabh Saxena. Is it true that Rana Raj Singh had imprisoned Aurangzeb? This is also mentioned by James Todd. So please shed some light.
सर जेम्स टोड की जहाँ तक बात होती है, जेम्स टोड मेरे हिसाब से जेम्स टोड की बहुत सारी बातें बहुत एग्जेगरेटेड है, एंड टू सम एक्सटेंट उसके लिए मैंने इस बात के लिए काफी कुछ सर्च करने की कोशिश किया, लेकिन मुझे कहीं कोई प्राइमरी सोर्स नहीं मिला। ऐसे जो जनेऊ का इंसिडेंट है उसके लिए मुझे प्राइमरी सोर्स अबुल फजल के राइटिंग में मिला, लेकिन ये क्लेम के लिए मेरे पास कोई प्राइमरी सोर्स नहीं आया जेम्स टोड के सेइंग्स के लिए। सो अभी इसमें मेरे पास एक ही सोर्स है, जेम्स टोड। तो इसके लिए मैं ज्यादा स्ट्रांगली नहीं बोल सकता हूँ कि ऐसा हुआ कि नहीं, बट इफ इट हैज नॉट बीन काउंटेड देन इट माइट बी ट्रू, माइट नॉट बी ट्रू। और हिस्ट्री को ऑब्जेक्टिविटी के तहत देखना चाहिए, क्योंकि इम्प्रिजनमेंट ऑफ औरंगजेब आई डोंट कंसिडर कि उतना कोई मायने रखता, क्योंकि उनको मराठास ने काफी फाइट दिया था, औरंगजेब को काफी फाइट मराठास ने दिया था, और इनफैक्ट औरंगजेब का अस्तित्व ऑलमोस्ट खत्म ही कर दिया गया था अगर छल नहीं किया जाता या ऐसा. सो आई डोंट थिंक इट वाज सच अ बिग इंसिडेंस, मे बी दैट जेम्स टोड ने एग्जैगरेट किया हो. आई डोंट नो, आई एम वेरी नॉट वेरी श्योर अबाउट इट.
So the next question is, it's my personal question regarding some things like the government which created the curriculum. So why was there so specific focus on the Mughals only? Because the government has no kind of lineage or any kind of heritage attached to the Mughals, but they still preferred to have books concerned towards the Mughals and all those things. So was there any particular reason why the focus was on that issues?
Focus was not only on Mughals. I would say that focus has been, like everyone has been saying, focus has been towards the Delhi. Whoever used to rule the Delhi would be spoken about. Like we have whole big chapters on Lodi, right? But Lodi se bade empire, जो strong one थे, they were down the south. Cholas, Pandyas. In fact, Bhosles were very powerful. और अहोम डायनेस्टी के बारे में बहुत कम बात की जाती है. Like it's very important when we talk about Mughals. So what I have done specifically, जब मैं मुगल्स के ऊपर किताब लिख रहा हूँ, तो मैंने ये इस बात का ध्यान रखा है कि मैं अहोम डायनेस्टी के बारे में बहुत डिटेल में बात करना चाह रहा हूँ, बिकॉज ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है कि सारे कॉन्करर्स नॉर्थ ईस्ट से आ रहे थे, नॉर्थ वेस्ट से कोई नहीं आ रहा था, जबकि उधर से ही पैसेज है, जबकि नॉर्थ वेस्ट वाज अ टफर पैसेज, लेकिन फिर भी उधर से आते थे, नॉर्थ ईस्ट से नहीं आते थे. तो व्हाट वाज दैट रेजिस्टेंस? इट वाज अहोम फोर्स. तो अहोम के बारे में भी हम बात नहीं करते. और हिस्ट्री हैज बीन लार्जली बायस्ड अबाउट दिल्ली, एंड हिस्ट्री हैज बीन मोर बायस्ड अबाउट कि कैसे पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ कंट्री क्रिएट करना था. जैसे इट वाज ऑल सेंटर्ड अराउंड अकबर को क्यों ग्रेट बनाया गया, क्योंकि सोशलिज्म के आइडिया को एम्बेड करना था. फिर अशोक को क्यों ग्रेट बनाया गया, क्योंकि सोशलिज्म को आगे लेकर के आना था. उसके बारे में काफी फेक नैरेटिव्स लाए गए कि अशोक बिकेम अ बुद्धिस्ट आफ्टर द कलिंगा वार, लेकिन प्राइमरी सोर्स कहते हैं कि ही वाज ऑलरेडी अ बुद्धिस्ट when he attacked Kalinga, and he did great massacres being a Buddhist, right? So perhaps one of the biggest genocide in the name of religion happened under Ashok back then. So similarly goes with the Mughals. So it was not about Mughals, but it was more about Delhi. Delhi center करके इन्होंने लिखा, क्योंकि सारा पावर दिल्ली पे कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड था, तो इनका फोकस वहां पे रहता था. इनका दो फोकस रहता था, सोशलिज्म और दिल्ली. और इसलिए अकबर पे ज्यादा फोकस है, क्योंकि अकबर के थ्रू भी ये सोशलिज्म बताना चाहते हैं. बट अकबर वाज नॉट अ सोशलिस्ट एट ऑल, नीदर अशोक वाज सोशलिस्ट, राइट? ऑफ कोर्स इफ यू आस्क मी, तो इवन यूएसएसआर वाज नॉट सोशलिस्ट द वे सोशलिज्म नीड्स टू वर्क. सो इस तरह के आइडियाज है जिसके वजह से हमारी बुक्स और सारे डायनेस्टीज के बारे में बात नहीं करती.
Manish has raised his hand. I request Manish to.
हाय सर, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है कि जो हमारे जो मॉडर्न हिस्टोरियंस है, व्हाट बेनिफिट दे गॉट बाय डिस्टॉर्टिंग आवर हिस्ट्री? उनको क्या फायदा हुआ? व्हाई आवर स्कूल बुक्स डिडंट टॉक मच अबाउट लचित बरफुकन, व्हिच यू सेड अबाउट, हु वाज अ वॉरियर इन अहोम हिस्ट्री? व्हाई इट वाज डेलिबरेटली हिडन फ्रॉम अस? And what benefit these modern historians got when they distorted our history and said that these Mughal emperors were secular in nature? उनको क्या फायदा हुआ सर?
See, I have my own personal thesis around it. That इसके लिए आपको पहले मार्क्सिज्म को समझना पड़ेगा. मार्क्सिज्म is a theory which cannot exist until and unless आपके पास क्लास स्ट्रगल है. सो इट फेल्स. अगर कहीं पे क्लास स्ट्रगल नहीं है तो वो फेल हो जाता है. तो अब थोड़ा सा ये मैंने आपको बता दिया, मैं थोड़ा डेविएट करके ले गया था पॉलिटिक्स की तरफ. जब 1970 के दशक में जब इंदिरा गांधी की सरकार को पूरी मेजोरिटी नहीं आई थी, 60 के दशक में लेट में, तो उन्होंने उनको कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी से सपोर्ट मिली थी, और कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी ने सिर्फ एक पोर्टफोलियो मांगा था, वो था एचआरटी मिनिस्ट्री, और नूरुल हसन हमारे एचआरटी मिनिस्टर बने. और जब नूरुल हसन HRD मिनिस्टर बने तो बहुत सारे अच्छे प्रोजेक्ट थे जो पास्ट में चल रहे थे और पहले के उसको हटा दिया गया। जैसे एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग प्रोजेक्ट था RC मजूमदार की 11 वॉल्यूम बुक है ऑन द इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन, उसको बहुत सारे इंडियन लैंग्वेज में कन्वर्ट करके भारतीय भवन पब्लिकेशन के थ्रू पूरे इंडिया में स्प्रेड करना था। तो आप मान सकते हो कि RC मजूमदार और जदुनाथ सरकार की जो किताबें हैं वो काफी इंडिक पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखी हुई हैं, और अगर RC मजूमदार की बुक हर जगह स्प्रेड हो जाती तो ये पता चल जाता कि वी नेवर हैड एनी क्लास स्ट्रगल एज सच, वो क्लास स्ट्रगल वाली थियरी कहीं एग्जिस्ट करती नहीं थी। और जैसे मेगास्थनीज द ग्रीक हिस्टोरियन व्हेन ही केम टू इंडिया, उन्होंने रिकॉर्ड किया इंडिया इज अ प्लेस जहाँ पे स्लेवरी एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता। वो बोलते हैं कि कैसा पेक्यूलियर प्लेस है इंडिया, ही फाउंड इट वेरी डिफरेंट कि इंडिया में स्लेवरी नहीं है। सो ऑफ कोर्स वो सब पॉइंट्स को लेकर के हिस्ट्री हमारी लिखी हुई थी जो हमारे सिविलाइजेशन को काफी ग्लोरीफाई कर रही थी। तो इन्होंने क्या किया, वो प्रोजेक्ट को रोक दिया और नई कैडर ऑफ हिस्टोरियंस पनपने शुरू हुए 1970 ऑनवर्ड्स, और उस समय JNU की स्थापना हो चुकी थी। तो जो किताब लिखी जाने लगी, किताब पे फोकस रहता था कि आप कास्ट की बात करें। जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि इस्लामिक स्कॉलर्स कास्ट की बात नहीं कर रहे थे, कास्ट की वजह से वेदर कन्वर्जन हो रहे हैं कि नहीं हो रहे हैं, बट दे स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट द कास्ट, दे स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट अमंग द वर्ना, राइट, कि ब्राह्मण विल हैव अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट विद द शूद्र, क्षत्रिय विल, सो इस तरह के आइडिया वहां से प्रोपोगेट होनी शुरू हो गई। जो फोकस था कि कैसे वर्ण व्यवस्था बहुत ही अच्छे से चलता था एंड इट वाज ऑल हार्मनी, कहीं पे कोई इशू नहीं था, उसको इन्होंने नए डेफिनेशन से ट्रांसलेट करना शुरू कर दिया, क्योंकि अब ये क्लास स्ट्रगल बनाना शुरू कर दिया। अब मॉडर्न टाइम्स में अगर देखा जाए तो इट डजंट मैटर टू मी कि मेरे सामने वाला बैठा वो ब्राह्मण है कि नहीं, बाजू वाला शूद्र है कि नहीं, बट वो इस नैरेटिव को 70s में ला करके इंडिया को एक क्लास स्ट्रगल की तरफ मोड़ दिए, जिसका रिजल्ट हमने मंडल कमीशन में भी देखा। तो और उसके पहले अब थोड़ा सा मैं आपको पीछे की तरफ लेके जाऊं तो BR अम्बेडकर ने भी जब रिजर्वेशन की बात करी थी तो वो 10 इयर्स प्रोग्राम था, उसके बाद उसको रिव्यू होकर के रिवाइज हुआ था वो, बट वो कभी गया नहीं, क्योंकि क्या हुआ कि वो स्ट्रगल जो है वो हमेशा बना रहना था लोगों के बीच में। तो कहीं ना कहीं मुगल्स को ग्रेट दिखाना या फिर हिस्ट्री को डिस्टॉर्ट करके रखना, ये जो पर्पसफुली किया गया था उसका रीजन ये था कि काइंड ऑफ वो कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग नेचर आपके दिमाग में हमेशा बना रहे, क्योंकि जो मुगल्स को इन्होंने लिंक कर दिया मुस्लिम से। अब जैसे आज अगर मैं बात करता हूँ कि मुगल्स ने इतना डिस्ट्रक्शन करा है, सो टुडे इंडियन मुस्लिम शुड नॉट बी डिसहार्टेंड अबाउट इट, नो वन इज टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट। हम मुगल्स के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, बट वो जो जहर उन्होंने घोल के रखा है उसकी वजह से हर मुस्लिम अपने आप को, हर नहीं मतलब बहुत मुस्लिम अपने आप को मुगल से रिलेट कर जाते हैं, बट दैट इज नॉट अ पॉइंट। जैसे हम ब्रिटिश को क्रिट कर रहे हैं उस तरह मुगल्स को क्रिट कर रहे हैं, उस तरह हम डच को भी क्रिट कर रहे हैं। इट हैज नथिंग टू डू विद क्रिश्चियनिटी जब आप ब्रिटिश को क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हो। सो इस तरह की नैरेटिव वाज सेट जस्ट फॉर द क्लास स्ट्रगल टू हैपन, और कोई रीजन नहीं था। एंड ट्रस्ट मी 1970 के पहले की जो बुक है, लाइक इनफैक्ट रोमिला थापर के गुरु थे बशीर की किताब है एंशिएंट इंडियन हिस्ट्री, वो काफी सुंदर किताब है। हाँ वो आर्यन इन्वेजन की बात करता है, लेकिन वो इतनी डिस्टॉर्टेड किताब नहीं है, दैट इज अ वेरी गुड बुक। सो आफ्टर 1970s ये सारे कारनामे होने लगे ज्यादा बड़े स्केल पे टू कीप द क्लास स्ट्रगल गोइंग।
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is Mughals are given the credit of standardization of Hindustani language.
Yes.
So, what are your views on it, sir?
See, had Mughals been the pattern of Hindustani language, तो उनकी किताब पर्शियन टर्की से ट्रांसलेट नहीं हो रही होती, वो हिंदुस्तानी लैंग्वेज में लिखी होती ना पहली बार। सो ये जबरदस्ती का उनको हिंदुस्तानी दिखाना हमको बंद करना पड़ेगा। जैसे ब्रिटिश वेयर ब्रिटिश फॉर अस, दीज गाइज वेर टर्की, टर्को मंगोल्स टू बी वेरी प्रिसाइज। अकबर वो जो ऋतिक रोशन को दिखाते हैं फिल्म में वैसा नहीं था, वो बिल्कुल एक टर्किश की तरह लगता था, वो मंगोल, एंड उसके एक एक्चुअल इमेज भी है, आई एम नॉट श्योर व्हिच लाइब्रेरी, व्हिच गिव्स अ कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट इमेज, ही लुक्स लाइक अ वेरी मच ऑफ अ मंगोल, राइट। तो क्या लैंग्वेज बोलता है वो, डेफिनेटली they used to talk in Persian and Turkic. They never spoke in Hindustani language to that great extent. That's why even translators used to exist that time. तो उन्होंने अपना कल्चर ट्रेडिशन कभी नहीं छोड़ा। राइट, जो टर्को मंगोल था, और हिंदुस्तानी लैंग्वेज की उन्होंने वैसा कुछ नहीं करा है। हिंदुस्तानी लैंग्वेज जो हम बोलते हैं, अब जैसे कई लोग बोलते हैं हिंदुस्तानी लैंग्वेज नथिंग बट अ सेट ऑफ द इंडियन लैंग्वेज व्हिच इज इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय हिंदी। और हिंदी और हिंदुस्तानी में बहुत फर्क है। हिंदी डेवलप हो चुका था 7th सेंचुरी के आसपास, उसको इन्होंने टर्किक इन्फ्लुएंस में ला करके नया लैंग्वेज का क्रिएशन हो रहा था, विच वाज उर्दू। उर्दू कम्स फ्रॉम उर्दू वर्ड विच इज द मिलिट्री कैंप्स, right? And it was for the slave language, if I put it in the right perspective of that time. So उर्दू और हिंदी, जो संस्कृत हिंदी को मिला करके ये जो नया लैंग्वेज निकालने की कोशिश कर रहे थे वो हिंदुस्तानी था। वो मुगल पीरियड में कभी नहीं हुआ, वो बहुत बाद में हुआ, जो बाद के स्कॉलर्स ने बहुत हद तक करने की कोशिश की। एंड इट वाज मेजरली अ प्रैक्टिस बाय म्यूजिक घरानास, इट वाज मेजरली अ प्रैक्टिस बाय डांस घराना, जो घरानास होते थे उन लोगों ने थ्रू लिटरेचर इसको आगे प्रमोट करना शुरू किया, बिकॉज उनको ब्राह्मण्स का पैटर्नशिप लेना था, उनको मुस्लिम्स का पैटर्नशिप लेना, सो दैट्स व्हाई इट ऑल हैपेंड। सो इट हैड नथिंग टू डू विद द Mughal doing anything for Hindustani language. There is also the record of it. They spoke Turkic and Persian. They never spoke Hindustani.
The next question is by Saurabh once again. Do you think the Mughals had unhindered rule in India? The opposition by Mewar, Bundelas and Marathas is underestimated.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have seen a lot of resistance which actually Mughals were facing. Mughals were never at peace. If you look at the Mughal Empire, maps अगर आप देखना शुरू करोगे, that increased a bit at the time of Aurangzeb. अकबर के टाइम पे भी नहीं था, और they were facing a lot of resistance. वो भी इनके टाइम में, औरंगजेब के टाइम में वो काफी छोटे समय के लिए वो एग्जिस्ट किया, around 30 to 40 years. So large chunk of time, their expanse was not that great. You're told that Mughal Empire was one of the largest empire, but उनसे बहुत बड़े empire थे, जैसे Chola Empire was massive, the Mauryan Empire was massive, right? So ये सारे empires की हम बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो उनके सामने तो मुगल कहीं exist. In fact, Maratha Empire was larger than them in the later period. When you look at the map, the search for Google, you will find it that Maratha map was much bigger. So they were not at peace at all. And Mewar Bundelas ने उनको काफी resistance दिया था. There are a lot of stories which are there in the Rajput chroniclers, but it's vagueness and the naiveness of our historians कि जब वो मेवाड़ हिस्टोरियंस या क्रॉनिकलर्स जो लोकल होते हैं, जो मेवाड़ी लैंग्वेज में बात करते थे, उनकी जो क्रॉनिकल्स उठा रहे हैं, तो उसमें ये बता रहे हैं कि राणा सांगा ने बाबर को, वो इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है। जो राजपूताना रेजिस्टेंस था उससे बारे में बात करनी है। एंड इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट दैट बहुत सारे जो लोकल टेक्स्ट हैं, फोकलोर्स हैं, उसको हम मेन स्ट्रीम में लाना शुरू करें, तो हमको रेजिस्टेंस के बारे में और डिटेल में बहुत अच्छे से पता चलेगा।
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that fine speech. Now, Shivansh Bhaiya is here with the vote of thanks.
No, sir, I have a last question. So, my question is, in present time, how leftist intolerance in prestigious universities and academic institutions can be curbed?
It can only be curbed if we really get our foundations correct. When I say foundation, हमको school level से work करना पड़ेगा। लेफ्टिस्ट इसीलिए प्रोमिनेंट है या फिर लेफ्ट आइडियाज क्योंकि मार्केट वैसा है। अभी यूथ माइट नॉट बी इंटरेस्टेड टू रियली लर्न दैट कैलकुलस वाज एक्चुअली डिस्कवर्ड इन इंडिया एंड ही विल सरप्राइज टू नो अगर उसको ऐसा बताया जाए। लेकिन जब स्टैंडर्ड 11 है, बच्चे को कैलकुलस इंट्रोड्यूस किया जा रहा है, उस समय से टीचर अगर उसको बताना शुरू करे कि माधवाचार्य फ्रॉम केरल ने या केरला ने कैलकुलस की स्थापना की थी और जिसका बेस फाउंडेशन आर्यभट्ट के वर्क से लिया गया था, सो वो क्या होगा जब वो बच्चा, ऐसे बहुत सारे एनेक्डोट रहेंगे जो उसके लाइफ पर 12 साल 14 साल की पढ़ाई में स्कूल में आता रहेगा। तो जब 12 साल के 14 साल के बाद जब बच्चा तैयार होगा या फिर जो स्टूडेंट तैयार होगा, तब मार्केट में जब वो प्रोडक्ट की तरह जा रहा है तो उसी हिसाब से शॉपकीपर्स भी चाहिए होंगे, तो दे विल बेंड ऑटोमेटिकली। अगर बच्चा ही जा करके बोल रहा है कि मुझे इंडिक थॉट्स चाहिए, आई नो दैट व्हाट आवर एंसेस्टर्स आर डन, तो व्हाई कॉलेजेस विल नॉट चेंज, दे विल चेंज। They are like, मेरा आइडिया इंस्टीट्यूशंस के लिए भी सेम है, मेरा आइडिया OTT प्लेटफॉर्म्स के लिए भी सेम है, बिकॉज आई एम नॉट अ बैन फेवरिंग गाय। क्योंकि बैन एक ऐसी चीज होती है, कई लोग बोलते हैं कि जेएनयू में इतने प्रॉब्लम हो गए, बंद कर दो। नहीं नहीं, वो नहीं कर सकता आप। इट्स एस्टैब्लिश्ड इंस्टीट्यूशन, वी हैव टू यूज इट इन द राइट वे। सिमिलरली ओटीटी प्लेटफॉर्म्स को बैन नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि आज कोई गवर्नमेंट उसको अपने हिसाब से मोड़ना चाहेगी, कल को कोई और गवर्नमेंट है कि वो अपने हिसाब से मोड़ना चाहेगी। FOE should never be curved, but at the same time we should create our strategy very well कि जो मार्केट में जो लोग आ रहे हैं वो चाह रहे हैं, तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली वो बेंड हो जाएंगे, चाहे वो ओटीटी प्लेटफॉर्म हो या फिर यूनिवर्सिटीज हो या फिर कोई भी इंस्टीट्यूशन हो, इट विल चेंज।
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I am Avichal Chayan, and today I am here to present a vote of thanks for today's webinar. I would like to thank our guest speaker, Aabhas Maldahiyar sir, for taking out time out of his busy schedule and enlightening us with their knowledge. Today's webinar was full of knowledge and interesting points. It gave us deep insights into the topic and also revealed some interesting facts. I am pretty sure the precious knowledge that Sir gave us will definitely help us in our studies and future. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure being with you guys.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir.
Thank
Thanks a
you
lot.
so
It was
much,
a great
sir.
session.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.